Late last week, I told you about oil giant Shell promoting a carbon tax and then selling the majority of their assets in the Alberta oil sands. According to their executive director, it was because they weren't advantaged enough in those projects. But that didn't stop them from taking Alberta taxpayer money for their Quest carbon capture and storage project that was added to the Scotford refinery in 2015, though. I'm not saying that as a business, Shell shouldn't make decisions to be more prosperous, but pushing a carbon tax on Albertans when they couldn't afford it themselves is simply indefensible. And why is the NDP giving them corporate welfare when they're a multi-billion-dollar company? Why is Shell taking it? Any business that can succeed on their own doesn't need taxpayer subsidies to do it. I think we all know by now that oil and gas companies are leaving Alberta left, right, and center because the business and political climate is unstable thanks to the NDP government. They've brought in a royalty review that actually didn't end up being too bad, but got companies' guard up because the previous one brought in by Ed Stelmach was detrimental to industry. The NDP also increased corporate taxes during the downturn, and they brought in the carbon tax that makes it more expensive for just about everything and for companies to produce hydrocarbons. We've seen companies pick up and leave Alberta. They've divested from the province, and some have even parked their rigs right next door in Saskatchewan, where the business and political climate is much friendlier under Brad Wall. If that's not an indication of how terrible it is here, I don't know what else would be. And even though Shell has left Alberta with only 10% of their stake in the oil sands left, that's not stopping Minister of Environment and Climate Change Catherine McKenna from denying that it's due to the carbon tax, and she says it was simply a business decision. Here, Deputy Premier and Minister for Health, Sarah Hoffman, insists that oil and gas companies are working with the NDP.
In the last few weeks, I've been to New York and Toronto and Washington, and I've asked potential investors what it would take to get our province back on track. They said, with the government we have in charge, we may as well hold up a sign that says, Alberta's not for them. Alberta's out of business and we are closed for business. U.S. oil supply is rising. Alberta is losing Shell, and a carbon tax is now here. And a new regulation, a set of new regulations, is being brought in by this government and is making us far less competitive. When will anyone in this government finally admit it's time to change course?
Thank you. Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, we're proud to work alongside with major employers in Alberta, including the President of Shell Canada, Michael Carruthers, who said Shell has long called for an effective carbon pricing framework. They create powerful economic incentives to reduce emissions and develop cleaner methods of production. Mr. Speaker, we're working with industry. We're creating great opportunities as we move forward. They're standing with us. The only ones standing alone, telling people to move their investment to other jurisdictions, are the members opposite. I wish they'd stop cheering against Alberta.
Yeah, the NDP are working alongside oil and gas companies to destroy any business investments they possibly can. I'll tell you, I think the NDP and the Liberals know exactly what they're doing, and this is all part of their plan to kneecap the oil and gas industry for their climate scam that involves taking people's money and throwing it at a plan for a problem that they aren't even sure will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And actions usually do speak louder than words. Shell just walked away from 90% of their assets in the oil sands while they invest in places like Venezuela, really anywhere but Alberta. I guess that ruins McKenna's narrative that they're transitioning to green energy and ditching all of their oil and gas assets. And the Conference Board of Canada forecasts that oil companies will lose $1.1 billion in 2017 before taxes. This is better than the $8.6 billion lost in 2016, but it just goes to show that Brian Jean is so right when he says that Alberta is closed for business. Oil prices are up and have stayed generally steady at over $50 a barrel so far this year, but companies are still losing money and avoiding investing in the province. Can we blame them for leaving? Absolutely not. But the NDP can't use low oil prices as an excuse anymore. They've totally destroyed any investor confidence with their terrible policies. And I honestly think that the industry will never be the same in Alberta. I mentioned the previous royalty review brought in by Ed Stelmach. Many companies started projects at that time and never picked them back up again. If that's the litmus test for us now, Think about it. We have even more policies that go against business that have been brought in by this incompetent government. Sure, the NDP might get voted out, but it's going to take at least a decade to clean up the mess that they've left behind. And businesses are going to go where they can be profitable. They aren't going to stick around for a rebuild filled with uncertainty. Like I said, the NDP have closed up shop in Alberta and the doors aren't going to open again anytime soon. For the Rebel.media, I'm Holly Nicholas. Thanks so much for watching. Have you checked out our subscription options starting at just $8 a month yet? For that price, you still get our free content plus all of our full-length shows. Click the link to subscribe today.